Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special evening, a special event hosted by the Tampa 912 Project. Now, I'll just tell you that we, the Tampa 912 Project, are hosting it. But I would be terribly remiss if I didn't say a very special thank you to a group of individuals, and at this point, one in particular, who has the very unenviable task of making me look good. That's nearly impossible. But this evening happened because of the vision, the inspiration, and the downright tenacity of the vice chair of the Tampa 912 Project. So Kimberly Kelly, thank you. Thank you. There are so many things that are going on that it's hard to pick one out that you focus your energy and your attention on. But this is definitely one that absolutely requires our utmost attention, our dedication, and requires us to be involved like some things that we haven't been involved in before. And we're going to talk more about that. The subject of the evening is Common Core, what it means, what it does, what it hopes to do, and the very, very high price that this nation will pay if we don't get involved and do something about it. And we'll pay that price with our very, very dearest treasure, and that is the livelihood, the very lives of our children. So, if I didn't set a grim enough stage, let me again say, welcome, visitors, to the Tampa 912 Project. Let me see a show of hands, please. You don't have to keep them up a long time, but just real quickly, put your hand up in the air if this is the first event for the Tampa 912 Project that you've ever attended. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, and thanks to the folks who are responsible for either one, getting you here, or two, letting you know that this was going to happen this evening, so that now you'll have a flavor of what it is that we do. We are an organization whose primary mission it is to educate. And that's what we hope to accomplish this evening. We're going to give you some information that we believe is very, very valuable and very useful, something that you'll be able to actually do something. It's actionable information. So thank you very much for being here this evening. At this point, I want to invite Terry Kemple to come join me up here. Terry's going to pray for us, and there's another announcement I'm going to make. It just came to mind, so somebody remind me of what it was that I was thinking about, okay? But Terry, come up here and join me. And by the way, just do the pledge first, or no? We're going to pray, and then we'll pledge. Just today, Terry Kemple has filed and is an official candidate for the Hillsborough County School Board. And of course, that's why we're here this evening. So it's great to know, and one of our guests this evening who currently serves, and I'll take care of that proper introduction in a little bit, but that's why it's so important. We have folks who share our views, our values, and our vision, and then we then get out and support them. So, with that in mind, Mr. Kemple, if you'll please pray for us.
Thank you. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Lord, we do come to you tonight to thank you, first of all, for your presence here with us, that you've said wherever two or more are gathered in your name, Father, that you're there, and we thank you that you're here now. We can feel your presence, and we pray that you will preside over everything that goes on this evening. Lord, I thank you for the 912 Project, for an organization that says, I believe in God, and He's important in my life. For an organization that says, I believe that America is good. Lord, we thank you for these values and others that this organization has. I thank you that you've allowed me to join. And Lord, I thank you for other organizations and individuals that have the same basic understanding of who we are as a people, what America is and what it stands for. We thank you for the people who founded this country, that they recognized it was only by your hand and by your will, and that it will only be by the continued presence of your hand and your will that our country will be able to continue. So as we have this meeting tonight, Father, as we listen to Dr. Effram, did I say it right? Effram, okay, thank you. As we listen to Dr. Effram and we find out what the Common Core is really about, Lord, I pray that you would enlighten us and that you would invigorate us and embolden us to get engaged, to, as my pastor used to say, get up off our blessed assurance and do something. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Can I hear an amen? You know, it's only appropriate that Terry would pray for our nation and that we would immediately follow that with the pledge of allegiance to the flag that includes and rightfully includes those words, under God. If you all will please join me in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. A couple quick announcements. I would be, they'll send me in for psychiatric eval if I don't mention the Tampa 912 calendar. For those of you all who are visiting us, if you're not a member of the Tampa 912 project, please go to meetup.org.com, tampa912.org. It'll take you right to our meetup page. Join. You can you can screen the amount of email that you get as a result of joining us. Okay, you can get a summation once a week or something like that. You don't have to get every announcement from Meetup. But let me encourage you to do that, because on our calendar, there are events, new events posted daily, sometimes weekly, and I want to just run through a couple of them that are coming up. And while I have this note in front of me, let me just mention this one first. This coming Sunday afternoon, up in Dade City, and the information is on our website. So I don't remember the address off the top of my head, but the address is on our website. This coming weekend is an event called Liberty Festival. Kim, help me. Did I say that? Liberty Festival, which is almost Dade City. No, not really. Land O'Lakes is a suburb of Dade City, according to me now. So it's in Land O'Lakes. This weekend, that event is going to have a lot of different activities, but one of them is going to be a dramatic reenactment of an encounter between some British representatives and some colonials. And Sam Adams, who is most widely known for the beer that I drink, okay, so not so much. But in doing some of the research on Sam Adams, we found out that he's a bit of a rabble-rouser. And I don't fit that at all. So they'll probably have to find someone else to play Sam Adams. But this weekend, Liberty Festival in Land O'Lakes, go to the calendar, all the details are there. And there's a flyer, if you want to write this web address down real quick, floridaliberty.org, and that also has all of the information. And we have extras if anybody, where'd my other note go that had all the other stuff? Oh, I had to turn the page over. I forgot I write on two sides. On 10 May, who knows Lieutenant Dan? Lieutenant Dan. Well, Gary Sinise is coming to town. He's doing a benefit concert for a young Marine who lost 3 of his limbs in war. And they're building him a house. We're raising money to build him a house down in South Tampa. On the 10th of May, Lieutenant Dan is bringing the Lieutenant Dan Band and doing a benefit concert over at Curtis Hickson Park. So that information is also on the calendar. I mentioned to you that Terry Kemple, Terry, raise your hand again over there, please. Terry Kemple has filed and is an official candidate now for the Hillsborough County School Board. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got to get our folks elected. And it requires the effort of every last one of us to do that. There'll be more information coming out about that. Terry, real quickly, website?
It's not up yet, but voteforterrykemple.com.
Voteforterrykemple.com. Very good. And also, well, I'll save that for when I do the introduction. A couple other things real quick. In case you all didn't know it, Steny Hoyer, who is a representative from the state of Maryland, a Democrat like me, said today that the reason that the bombing took place yesterday at the Boston Marathon was because of sequester.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay?
Sheila Jackson called it sequester.
Yeah. Sheila Jackson Lee, a paid representative in Congress in Washington, D.C., said that she thought it was due to the sequester. Look, all we ask is that you at least, if you're going to say it in Spanish, say it in Spanish. But if you're going to say it in English, would you please use English? Okay. Also, in case you missed it, and I imagine you did because you all are here today, right now, but today was Muslim Day in Tallahassee.
What? We missed it.
Okay, so here's the takeaway from that. Muslim Day in Tallahassee. Okay, well, if they're good Americans, good for them. But I want to tell you something. If any group goes to Tallahassee to support anything other than the United States Constitution, it requires, again, the effort and the investment of time, energy, and talents of every last one of us to be contacting our representatives, of which, now that I'm thinking about it, Mary LaFollette, would you raise your hand, please? Mary is here. She is the representative. She's here on behalf of Representative Jake Rayburn out of Plant City, that part of the county. So, Mary, thank you for being here. Tell the representative we appreciate you being here as well, him being representative. Okay, I'm getting to it. I really am. There are just a couple more things. Facebook. It's on here somewhere. Oh, it's on the side. That's why. Okay. Please, if you haven't done so already, if you're a member or if you're not a member, go to Facebook. Anybody know what Facebook is? What's the old one that they used to use? MySpace. Anybody here still use MySpace like me? Yeah, good. So Facebook, I'm just catching up with this stuff. Facebook is the new one. Go to Facebook and like our Facebook page, Tampa 912 Project on Facebook, okay? All right. So, with that in mind, we're going to get on to the meat of the program. I'm really excited to see all of you all here. I'm really excited that we have folks that care enough to come and invest their time, talent, and treasures and bring their family with them. Thank you so much, Maria, for being here, for Francine for being here. We appreciate that greatly. We have folks that care enough to do the research and put a presentation together to come and share with us the information about what's going on right under our noses. And my lovely wife said the other night, I saw the Exxon Mobil commercial. Have you seen that one about Common Core? I about jumped out of the bed. She thought I got bit by a bed bug. And she'd kind of gotten used to my reaction about that sometimes. But when I told her I said it's Common Core. And she's a lovely woman, but she doesn't have any idea what Common Core is. And that's my fault for not telling her, right? So good on you all for being here. Good to our guests for being here to bring us information. And with that, I'd like to introduce to you a gentleman who just today filed for and has become a candidate for Hillsborough County Commission, District 4, which is the eastern part of the county, okay? Let me tell you a little bit more about Dr. Stacy White. He is a fifth-generation native of Hillsborough County and has lived here continuously, with the exception of the time that he went away to get indoctrinated at college. He earned a Doctor of Pharmacy degree from the University of Florida. We'll pray for him. Dr. White contributes to the education of pharmacy students by serving as a clinical assistant professor of pharmacy at the University of Florida, where he has also served as a course facilitator and an academic advisor. In 2006, he was honored by the university in receiving the Roche Preceptor of the Year in an outpatient setting award. You try to say that fast 5 times. As a pharmacist, Dr. White has played a role in the shift toward a clinical model of pharmacy practice by taking on a leadership role in medication therapy management and becoming certified as an immunizing pharmacist. Dr. White is active in the community. He attends church at the First United Methodist Church of Brandon and is coached at the local Hillsborough County Recreation Center. He served as a classroom volunteer, a PTA board member, and frequent Great American teach-in speaker. Dr. White was elected to the Hillsborough County School Board in 2010 and has served our community well. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Stacy White. So here's what we're going to do with Dr. White, because he's got another commitment. I'm going to give you some time. Tell us, share with us, if you will, and then we'll have a few questions for Dr. White before he gets out of here, because he's got to get off to another event. But Dr. White, thank you very much for joining us, and they're all yours.
Well, thank you for having me. I don't know that I'll lay claim to getting indoctrinated in college. I went to professional school and picked up a real-life skill in college in learning how to become a pharmacist. I want to thank you for having me tonight. As was mentioned by Tim, I do have another commitment tonight, and Kimberly and Tim were kind enough to put me at the beginning tonight. And I don't want to steal Dr. Effram and Ms. Harmon's thunder by going into great detail on Common Core, because I see that Dr. Effram has a very nice PowerPoint presentation put together for you. I see that these packets were distributed tonight. I know that there's been a lot of chatter online and things like that. So you all pretty well know what Common Core is all about. If you don't, you're going to know by the time you leave here this evening. You know, I had planned to say that the majority of you in the audience probably already know me and are familiar with me, but I saw a lot of hands go up when Tim asked if it was anyone's first time tonight. So it's great to see that a lot of you have come out for the first time tonight to be a part of the political process and to take note of what's going on in your country, in your state, in your local community, because I'm of the opinion that one of the issues that we're facing today as a country is that all of us, myself included, have just been complacent for too long. We just haven't paid attention to what's going on around us. We haven't gotten out here and gotten engaged at a local level like this. So I just want to say how much I thank all of you and appreciate you, and all of you, particularly the ones that are here for the first time tonight. I want you to pat yourselves on the back. I want you to continue to come out to these meetings and be engaged in the governmental process. I am getting over a bit of a cold, so I apologize that I'm a little bit nasally this evening. I hope that that's not too much of an annoyance for you. But it's, again, just my pleasure to be here, and I wouldn't have missed it for the world. So just to tell you a little bit about me, I believe in American exceptionalism. I believe that our primary and secondary school students should have a worldview that's from an American perspective. I'm not a globalist. And I believe in a factual and accurate presentation of American history in our schools. Now, I don't like being controlled by Tallahassee or Washington, D.C. any more than you do. And I'm a huge proponent of local control in general, especially local control of education. But it pains me to have to tell you tonight that as a school board member, I have very little control over where we go from here with respect to the Common Core standards. And in talking to the audience members tonight and working my way around the room, I've heard some different things like, oh my goodness, I've heard that this is coming before the school board for a vote real soon. That's not the case. Our next meeting is next Tuesday. There's nothing about Common Core on our agenda. This is really being driven from a higher level. So what I hope to do tonight, and again, I don't want to take too much of Dr. Effram and Ms. Harmon's time, because they're really going to get into what Common Core is from an expert perspective, okay? What I hope to do tonight is to help you in your efforts as we look at Common Core. And the most important thing that I can suggest tonight is that you look at the state level, and I would begin to work with the State Commissioner of Education, Tony Bennett, and the Florida State Board of Education. We used to have a school board member that would call them the school board in the sky, okay? And that really resonates with me because, again, I'm a huge proponent of local control. But it's really the State Department of Education, specifically the commissioner and the state board that's driving this train at this point. So I've got a couple suggestions for you tonight. One would be to start a phone call, letter writing, email campaign to Commissioner Tony Bennett, to the State Board of Education. The State Board met just today. Just today. This is up to the minute information. I am getting information that Tony Bennett, the State Commissioner of Education, has expressed an interest in slowing down a bit on the implementation of Common Core. I don't want to speak for the commissioner, but what I read into that is that he sees what a huge undertaking this is. He sees what's at stake. And I would imagine that he is starting to hear some of the concerns from the community. So you've got to strike while the iron's hot here. If you go to the State Board of Education's website, you'll see they meet at various cities around the state. You'll see that their next two meetings are in Jacksonville and Bradenton. Their meeting schedule has not been released beyond that. But Bradenton is right in our backyards, folks. Okay, so I would strongly suggest that you get together as a group and consider a carpool effort, a bus trip, something down to Bradenton to get in front of the State Board of Education. I don't want you to forget about your legislators either, because they have influence over this project. So I would strongly suggest that you get on the phone and, again, start a letter writing or email campaign to your state legislators. As far as what I would have control over as a school board member, at least a vote in the matter, is whether Common Core is implemented or not. We have some say-so over the curriculum that has to meet whatever standards are in place. So I'm fully committed to you, as always, to do my part as a school board member, to look closely at curriculum issues as they get implemented. And I just want to let you guys know that I hear your concerns. I'm always accessible, and you always have an open door to my office. And I want to give you guys 3 ways to contact me. And I'll repeat each of the 3 ways. Okay, the first way would be by telephone. That's 813-272-4052. Again, that's 813-272-4052. And again, my name is Stacy White. You'll reach my secretary, Valerie, at that number, and she always gets my messages to me within minutes. Another way to reach me is to go to the school district website, follow the link to the school board, find my name and picture. You can click on a link there to email me. Or I can just simply give you the email address, and I'll repeat it. It's Stacy, S-T-A-C-Y, .White, W-H-I-T-E, at sdhc.k12.fl.us. That's a mouthful, so I'm going to repeat it. It's Stacy, S-T-A-C-Y, a period, and then White, W-H-I-T-E, at SDHC, as in School District of Hillsborough County, .K12, as in kindergarten through 12th grade education, .FL, as in Florida, .US, as in United States. With that being said, we've got a 3-person panel tonight. I know that each one of us wants to go over a few things that'll take 15, 20 minutes of your time. So I'm about ready to turn the floor over, but I would like, if it's okay with Tim, to take a 5 to 10 minute question and answer session.
No editorials, please. Questions?
How much of their big grant.
Very good.
Each one recipient.
Are you going to repeat the question so that?
Sure. The question is, how much control does the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have over the school district of Hillsborough County? And all you would have to do is Google Stacy White School Board to see that I've expressed great concerns that they have too much control over the school district of Hillsborough County. And I continue to believe that, and I'm working on that consistently. I feel like I've made some headway on that issue, but needless to say, you chew on an elephant one bite at a time, right? So.
Okay, before we have the next question, real quickly, Dr. White, can you tell us one or two bites that you've taken out of the Gates Foundation control?
Absolutely. You know, the biggest thing that I can point to, and believe me, if you know this school district and the way that it's been run administratively in the past, you'll know that this is a huge step. But they've done some surveys. They've asked the teachers some questions about the process of the evaluation. They've gotten feedback from the field. They've reacted to that. That's the biggest thing that I can point to. And that, again, it's a small step, it's a small bite, but I'm committed to continue to ask the questions and to really hold administration's feet to the fire with respect to what we're doing with, they call it on the inside EET, or Empowering Effective Teachers. That's what they've called the evaluation process that's come out as a result of the grant. So.
Excellent, great question. Thank you. Dee, I saw you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
Yes, was the email, is that Stacy, White?
Period, dot.
Period.
Yep.
And then, what is it, at S?
I'll get that for you, Dee. I'll get.
I can leave you a card.
Yeah,
Sure
we'll
thing.
get that for you. Let's have a question for Dr. White. Please, yes, sir.
Yeah, hey, thank you so much.
Stand up, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. You mentioned in your talk that you have some say-so over local curriculum. Could you explain that a little bit more? Because I know one of the concerns is that Common Core will direct and change local curriculum. If you elaborate, I think it would make people feel a lot better. Knowing how much local control is.
And unfortunately, the answer is not much, okay? But the state puts down standards that all 67 school districts in the state of Florida have to meet. Currently, we have what's known as the Next Generation Sunshine State Standards. Another mouthful, okay? They like to use a lot of multi-word terms, a lot of acronyms in the education community. But we're currently, they just call them the Sunshine State Standards for short. So currently, each of the 67 school districts has some control over developing their curriculum, but the curriculum must be aligned with the Sunshine State Standards. If the Common Core standards are implemented, the same would hold true. Although we would have a say in the implementation of the curriculum, that curriculum could not deviate from those standards, from the Common Core standards.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I've heard that some parents have been told they have no rights to know the curriculum. I mean, where's that coming from?
Okay, so the question was, do parents have any rights, or do the kids really belong to the collective, as according to that CNN anchor?
Okay.
That was MSN, CNN, MSN. I don't know how to spell. I had Common Core as a curriculum.
Okay, in reference to that question, someone just kind of whispered in my ear that that's part of Dr. Effram's presentation, so I want to give her a chance to go through that PowerPoint and go over some of those things.
But we'll get that question answered.
And
Dave.
kind of a follow-on, again, you might want to answer that now, but if that's the case, doesn't that violate the Florida Sunshine Laws? Is that something we can use?
Okay, so the question is, if parents don't have,
Right.
then doesn't that violate the Florida Sunshine Rules? That assumption is that there's something in the Florida Sunshine Rules that says that parents have a right, and I think Dr. Effram will.
I don't know Florida law that well yet,
Okay.
so.
Well,
we'll have to
and
look
Great
into
question,
that.
we'll find out. Maybe we could get a school board member to look into that for us.
Sure, and I can tell you that Hillsborough has not yet developed a curriculum that's aligned with Common Core. But when such time comes, if such time comes, that a curriculum is indeed developed, that is by all means a public record and something that me or any school board member can take a look at for you and keep you in, right.
And I'm very well versed in the sunshine laws, and it applies across the board for all government entities.
Yep.
Not
Good deal.
just the state.
Good deal. One more question. Yes, sir, please.
Yes, can charter schools play any role to counter this, Common Core, establishing charter schools?
No, sir, they would have to meet the same standards. Charter schools are public schools, and they have to meet the same standards. So if Common Core is implemented, it would affect charter schools as well.
What about totally separate funding from the state? How do you fund it?
Catholic schools are accepting it too.
Yeah, charter schools, there's a set process for how they're funded, and they are, although they are run by their own individual charter school board, they're all funded the same way. The money comes through the school district with the district as the flow-through agent. They have to meet the same state standards. They have to have their charter approved by the local school board. So, you know, they would be fully affected by Common Core as well.
Bonnie, I'm going to get our guest behind you.
Have we taken any federal money attached to the Common Core yet?
Yes, and again, that's at the state level, but yes.
Okay. Bonnie, real quick.
Yes, you said that it hasn't been implemented in Hillsborough County, but I have an employee at Harewood Elementary, the teacher is talking to them about Common Core, and they're already taking tests. So
There's talk about Common Core, but if Common Core indeed ends up being implemented, it would be for the 14-15 academic year. So there is some talk about it throughout the county, but there's been no full implementation.
All right. Dr. White, thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you again, Dr. White, for coming to join us this evening. I know you got to get off to the next event, and we appreciate very much you being here this evening and sharing with us at least access to you. And hopefully you are an advocate for us. Sounds like you are, and I promise you that we'll be in touch. Terrific. Thank you again, Dr. White. So you never know who you're going to meet on a bus to Tallahassee, right? Many of you all have heard me say before that but for a chance meeting at a sports bar grill 4 years ago, I wouldn't know probably any of you all. But I went to that meeting, and here we are today. And my good friend Mark Grosenbaugh got on a bus to Tallahassee not too long ago and was engaged in a conversation with a lady that said, they were just talking about things, and as it turns out, they share many of our principles and values in common. And the result of that is involvement. My point for telling you that story is just this. Talk to folks. You'd be surprised. What Beck said 4 years ago is just as true today. There are more of us than there are of them. We surround them. What it's going to require is, in the words of Terry Kemple's pastor, for us to get up off of our blessed assurance and say hi to our neighbors. Go meet your neighbor and tell them what it is that we're doing out here. And so that's a perfect segue into introducing our next guest. Gloria Harmon, who is here with her daughter this evening, Francine. Francine, say hi. There's Francine. All right. Thank you, Francine, for bringing your mom out tonight. We appreciate that. Gloria Harmon is a concerned parent who currently homeschools one of her 2 children. She's a full-time mother, which is more than a full-time job. That was editorial comment. It wasn't on the sheet. And a part-time worker at her church. Ms. Harmon has taught 8 years in the public school system, 5 years as a special needs educator, and 3 years of social studies. Her concerns as an educator and homeschool mom have led her to be involved in the Common Core issue. where for so many, that's where it begins when you find out about it. Ms. Harmon was raised in Miami by her immigrant Cuban parents who left during the height of the revolution. This is an important reality to have control. This is an important reality to have control and knowledge of her children's education, and that goes for all of us who are parents or grandparents in this room. And with that, I'd like to introduce you all to Ms. Gloria Harmon.
Well, good evening, everybody. I think Dr. Effram is probably going to cover a larger scale of the Common Core standard, but I'm coming here as a mom. I'm coming here as a former teacher and a current homeschooling mom, and I just have a lot of concerns. And the first thing that came to mind when I heard about Common Core standards is, what about local control? Just like anything else, local, can you hear me now? Okay. Local control is key, and that was my first concern. I didn't even think of what quality would result from these common standards. As I started looking into it, my fears were justified. Who is going to decide what our kids are going to learn? Yes, they will tell you, if you research Common Core, you will see that it says Common Core state standards. The goal is that everybody's on the same plane, that we raise the standards, that we compete better with other countries in the world. But the bottom line is, that's not what's going to happen. And I've looked into this curriculum. The quality of the curriculum is questionable. If you just look at, I went in deeper actually. Right now, Common Core standards, if you start researching it, one of the things they talk about, well, the two main emphases are math and English. But if you keep researching, it's going to cover everything. The next thing that's coming is going to be called the Next Generation Science Standards. It's tied in with Common Core. So yes, you think, well, math, harmless. How much harm can it be done? Can they do to math? English, well, the choice of books, what they choose to emphasize. And one of the things with Common Core that they're going to do is they're going to require more nonfiction reading. What nonfiction are they going to emphasize? Okay. With math, I'm already seeing it in math. Common Core is not supposed to be fully implemented till the year 2014-15 school year. I'm already seeing with my son in 3rd grade in the public school system, they don't require him to memorize the multiplication facts. It's all about understanding. So they have to spend a whole year of the why behind multiplication facts. His teachers, the way they were talking to me, I could tell they were frustrated. I'm seeing these teachers in the school system frustrated. I'm speaking to teachers that are talking about retiring. And these are teachers that are great teachers that have been in the system for a long time. And they're just sick of it. So the math is questionable. The English is a big concern. What books are they going to have my son read? And then, as I started looking, I looked at science. Oh my goodness, that's the next step, of course, along with social studies. I just want to read to you, and this is directly from the Next Generation Science Standards, with, by their own words, say they're collaborating with Common Core. They're the next step after Common Core is implemented. And let me just read you from their literature what they say. They say the definition of science in terms of Western science, while ignoring historical contributions from other cultures, presents a limited or distorted view of science. It gets better. Furthermore, such view was disrespectful to other cultures and could be regarded as racism. It gets better. Stay seated. So they also say that by emphasizing engineering, it recognizes the contribution of other cultures historically. This, their words, redefines what counts as science. So we're going to redefine what counts as science. And here's the good part, which in turn defines and determines social science curriculum. So you're going to hear, if you go to administrators, if you go to people in the education field, they're told, no, these are standards, not curriculum. We develop our own curriculum. I'm sorry, but if you really think it through, standards and curriculum go hand in hand. If in the standards it says global warming is caused by human beings, guess what? Your curriculum is going to teach your child that global warming is caused by human beings. So they're closely related. They go hand in hand. You cannot separate it. But legally, they cannot say that it's a national curriculum because that goes against 3 federal statutes. So let me read you a little more about this science that's coming. The Next Generation Science Standards also states that through social activism, students develop critical consciousness of social inequities, especially as such inequities that exist in their communities. They're going to create little social activists, little community organizers. Okay, so now some people might, well, this sounds good. Who is to decide what your child learns? Who is to decide what is the passion for your child? What is he going to focus on? Is it you as the parent, the grandparent, the aunt, the guardian, or is it a government? Now, as you look into this, and I think Dr. Effram is going to get into more detail, as you look into this, technically, it's not the government saying you have to do this, but it's through government funding. This was kicked in through the stimulus package. All these organizations that have their hand in the development of the standards and in turn are going to have their hand in the development of the assessment, all are receiving money from the federal government through the stimulus bill. And also, somebody mentioned, Linda, the Bill Gates Foundation, they're receiving money for them because they're a big supporter and they're backing it up by millions. And actually, Bill Gates is working with, I think it's the largest publishing company in the world to develop curriculum for the Common Core. So local control is out the door if you're dealing with Common Core standards. And we all know that the future of this country lies in our children. What they learn and what they hear they're going to be the future voters. They're going to be the future voting bloc. They're going to make legislative decisions by who they vote or whether they go into office. It's bad enough that our universities have already been hijacked, and now we're going to start with our kindergartners and up. And, you know, I'm sure Dr. Effram has a lot more information, but I want to close with 2 quotes. One of them is from Madison. Now, James Madison, when he wrote Federalist 48, he said, "It will not be denied that power of an encroaching nature, and it ought to be effectually restrained from passing the limits assigned to." I'm sure I skipped that. In other words, power, you give a little, they take more. By giving the government or these large organizations the power to choose what the standards are going to be for all the kids, uniform, across the country, we are taking away the power from our hands. And we're giving it to bureaucrats, quite honestly, because how many of them taught in a classroom? I've been in the classroom. I've taught in the projects. I've taught advanced kids. I've taught special ed kids. I've seen all sides as a mom, as a teacher, and as a homeschooling mom, and it's a concern. And if you think as a homeschooler you probably don't have to worry, yes, we do. And private schools, not just charter schools, will have to worry, because just here in Florida, we have the voucher program. The state decides who gets the vouchers. So it's very easy for them to say, are you accredited? Do you follow Common Core state standards? If you don't, we cannot make you part of the voucher program. And money talks, and these private schools need to survive. So this will affect all of us. And as homeschoolers, I can tell you right now, the homeschooling curriculum I currently use for math is already advertising Common Core. They're already saying they're aligning with Common Core. And from what I see in math, it's a big concern. It's a big concern. And there have been experts who have said, the only mathematician I think on the panel, that it's going to set us back 2 years compared to other countries. So this is big. Education is key. And just my last quote, and this is from Woodrow Wilson. He used to be in education. This is lovely. And this is how he viewed it. And quite honestly, education is key. And this is how he viewed it. And I do believe that how a lot of people who are making these decisions view our education system. It says, it was for that reason that I used to say, when I had to do with the administration of an educational institute, again, this is Woodrow Wilson, that I should like to make the young gentlemen of the rising generation as unlike their fathers as possible. not because their fathers lacked character or intelligence or knowledge or patriotism, but because their fathers, by reason of their advancing years and their established position in society, had lost touch with the processes of life. They had forgotten what it was like to begin. They had forgotten what it was like to rise. They had forgotten what it was like to be dominated, like a victim, dominated by the circumstances of their life on their way up from the bottom to the top. Therefore, they were out of sympathy with the creative, formative, and progressive forces of society. We have a big job. This is important, and we need to get off the couch and we need to do something, because I am concerned. Even though I homeschool, honestly, in the United States, only 4% of the population of children are homeschooled. That's very small. That's not a large voting bloc right there. Okay? So all these kids, and even concerned parents who have kids in the public school system or in a private school, okay, because I know the Catholic school is already accepted Common Core. All Catholic private schools. Okay? That is going to affect us. And mom and dad work very hard, and most of us, you get home at what, 5, 6 o'clock at night. Do you really have time to go over everything they did and then try to unbrainwash them? Come on, where's dinner, where's homework, and you need sleep. So I hope that helped a little.
Technical difficulties, there'll be a timeout. I could sing or dance, but it wouldn't do it. No, never mind. There goes one of the most prolific writers I've ever met in my life.
What did I do?
Ladies and gentlemen, again I tell you, and Ms. Harmon brings that point home so eloquently, about the need, each and every one of us, to grab our neighbor, our brother or our sister, a complete stranger, and bring them up to speed on what is going on. This isn't really a new idea, as Ms. Harmon points out. Wilson was talking about implementing this 100 years ago. Now, we may not be able to undo it completely overnight, but I tell you what, we have got to step on the brakes at a minimum. And the only way that gets done, is we support people in local public office, Terry Kemple, Stacy White, of people who share our views and values. We do that when the election comes. But right now, immediately, tonight when you go home, you get on the computer, if you have one. You get on the computer and you send one of your representatives, Jake Rayburn, Dan Rollerson, State Senator Tom Lee, you send them emails right now and you tell them as a parent, as a grandparent, for you young people here, you all get on the computer and tell them, stop, this doesn't work. We have got to be teaching kids how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide before they get to the 5th grade. And we already know now that they're teaching them feelings in the 3rd grade about math. How do you feel math? Anyway, Ms. Harmon, thank you so much. Thank you very much. Now, real quick, Karina.
Today there was a national Twitter rally, Stop Common Core. We trended number 2 on Twitter. Stop Common Core. That'll keep us, it'll get us past corporate control media and into other people's minds.
Terrific. Thank you, Karina. Karina Morrison, another Patriot mom back there, just doing the Lord's work. Thank you very much. Listen, and I'm reminded real quickly, someone was asking about some flyers for the Liberty Festival. They're on the back table back there. We have some more flyers, so if you need information on the Liberty Festival, it's back there. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my great pleasure and privilege to bring to you our featured speaker for the evening. Dr. White and Ms. Harmon did a great job of teeing the ball up. I use a lot of golf analogies, especially on Thursday afternoons. But for Dr. Effram to come and give us some of the meat, some real actionable information that we can use, we can take, and immediately this evening, tomorrow morning, get right on it and take some action about this, on this. Let me share with you about Dr. Karen Effram. She's a pediatrician, a researcher, and a conference speaker. Dr. Effram's medical degree is from Johns Hopkins University and her pediatric training from the University of Minnesota. She's provided testimony for Congress as well as in-depth analysis of numerous pieces of major federal education, health, and early childhood legislation for congressional staff, state legislatures, and many organizations. Dr. Effram serves on the boards of 4 national organizations: Education Liberty Watch, the Alliance for Human Research Protection, the International Society for Ethical Psychiatry and Psychology, and the National Physicians Center. She's spoken at numerous state and national conferences, been interviewed by Fox News, interviewed by or quoted in the Wall Street Journal, the British Medical Journal, National Journal, WorldNet Daily, Newsmax newspapers, radio and television stations across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to bring to you Dr. Karen Effram.
Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you very much to all of you for inviting me here and for your willingness to work. And thank you for your excellent comments. This is a huge issue. This will affect not only right now, but generations to come if we do not take action. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak before you. I'm going to talk first about the origins of Common Core. The states were required to adopt national standards as part of the Race to the Top grant program slipped into the 2009 stimulus bill, as our previous speaker mentioned. There were no committee hearings or debate in Congress about Race to the Top or the standards. Not a single bit. It was $4.3 billion grant program for Race to the Top, and then a separate it's actually $1 million grant system, that's a mistake on my part, to develop a statewide student data system. But that was also in the stimulus bill, and that's a key part of this, is the data collection. What is Common Core? Even though it's called state standards, and I put that into quotation marks, they're actually national K-12 standards in English and math. They were developed by the Council of Chief State School Officers, the National Governors Association, and a group called Achieve. And parenthetically, I'll just tell you that those same 3 groups were involved in developing what was first called America 2000 under President George H.W. Bush, that became Goals 2000 under President Clinton. But that was the last attempt to nationalize education, and that started in 1994. It was passed then, and states around the country had to put in state standards, which was a big step away from locally controlled district standards. These standards are not state developed. Do not fall for that line that these standards are state developed or state led, because they are not. They were copyrighted by the groups that put them, that wrote them, and they were required to be adopted verbatim. So if a state was going to sign on, they had to take all of the standards and then could add 15% of their own content, but none of that 15%, as small as it is going to be involved in the national tests that go with it. So we have national standards. We have national assessments. We have federal involvement in assessment writing and model curriculum guidelines. So again, they'll say, oh, it's not a curriculum, it's just standards. Well, what do you think school districts for their funding and teachers for their pay and their tenure are going to follow? Locally developed 15% of extra stuff, or the model curriculum that's put out by the federally funded consortia that are writing these tests? There's teacher pay and tenure reform, which is, I think, the reason that a lot of Republicans joined in on this whole idea of race to the top and the Common Core standards, because they thought it was going to be a way to break the teachers' unions. But they were sold a bill of goods because they lost control of the standards, and it's a real problem. And they also bought into all the other bad parts, which includes a state longitudinal data system and what they call P through 20 monitoring, which is cradle to career monitoring and oversight by the government of everybody, literally from preschool through the workforce, not just K through 12, but it's a whole system to establish education and workforce. And then there's a big expansion of preschool. And along with that, after the Race to the Top grants, there was something called the Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge, which was basically a baby race to the top. And it includes national early childhood standards, kindergarten readiness assessments, quality rating system, again, a longitudinal data system, screening, a big push for early childhood screening that has a really big emphasis on what they call socio-emotional or mental health screening of 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds. So how many people are comfortable with the government deciding what is normal behavior, thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs of our youngest children? I'm not. And then home visiting, so we can have someone from the government who is here to help us raise our children. There are many, many, many problems with Common Core, and I'm going to go through them as best I can. Conflicts of interest, lack of academic quality, radical connections, psychological manipulation, loss of privacy and data collection, huge cost, huge unfunded mandates. This is a big issue for school board elections and also for county commissioners. Career tracking, basically having kids steered into their work based on the needs of local businesses or corporations and the state, not necessarily what the children and the families want. And that is a system that has been tried many other places and hasn't really done well. Effect on private and home schools, which was already mentioned. Loss of parental parental and local control and state sovereignty. And then the illegality that Ms. Harmon mentioned as well. Here are the proponents of Common Core. The biggest one is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Microsoft, which stands to benefit hugely from the computer data systems and the computerized curriculum. GE, which will benefit from the hardware and software, and hardware not only for the assessments, which are all going to be computerized, but also the monitoring equipment, which I'm going to tell you about in a little bit. ExxonMobil, the despicable ads from the Masters tournament were already mentioned. The National Chamber of Commerce. I'm not saying any of this about, local chambers who are small business people, but the National Chamber of Commerce is big into this. The same with the National Business Partnership and the Business Roundtable. Former Governor Bush is an enormous proponent of this, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. More proponents are the three organizations, obviously, that helped develop the standards, the Council of Chief State School Officers, ACHIEVE, and the National Governors Association. The National PTA, Foundation for Excellence in Education, which is Jeb Bush's foundation. The Thomas B. Fordham Institute, which goes around making pronouncements on all the state standards. The Manhattan Institute, the Harvard Review. So they've been writing about the wonders of it, and I don't know how many of you saw the article in National Review a week or so ago, written by someone from from the Fordham Foundation and the Manhattan Institute, saying that all of us benighted citizens that are objecting to this are really stupid and couldn't possibly think that there's anything wrong with Common Core. Well, guess what? All of these organizations have received enormous contributions or grants from the Gates Foundation. All of them. So anything that they say about Common Core really needs to be scrutinized in that light. Even if you take the Thomas Fordham Foundation Institute's finding that the Common Core standards are of high quality and high academic rigor, you have to wonder about their rating, because they said that Common Core, Florida's current standards, the Sunshine Standards, are already near or above the quality of Common Core. In mathematics, actually, Florida's grade is a little higher, and the English is just a little bit lower. So why are we spending what could be $1 billion to put in this new system when the standards are already, by their view, about the same? There is a huge problem with academic quality loss. They define college readiness as being the same for 4-year, 2-year, and vocational colleges. So that's basically diluting the academics required for a selective 4-year university. And despite claims by proponents that the standards are internationally benchmarked, several people on the validation committee that were very well qualified asked repeatedly for the evidence, and they never got it. And so these 4 people, including Dr. Sandra Stotsky and Dr. James Milgram, who was the only mathematician on the panel, they refused to sign off. They refused to sign off on the final standards because they had so many concerns about their quality. For English, none of the major Common Core architects had ever taught in a K through 12 classroom. The reading is at a 7th grade level. They're basically empty skill sets. And so they have to, it's the same set of skills whether you're talking about reading a menu or whether you're talking about reading Moby Dick. So they don't learn the importance and the qualities of great literature. The emphasis on informational texts instead of literature results in a significant reduction in literary studying, leading, according to Sandra Stotsky, quote, to fewer opportunities for students to acquire the general academic vocabulary needed for college work. She also said the division of reading standards leads to a completely incoherent literature curriculum in grades 6 through 12. Neither the literature nor the informational texts are taught in context. For instance, the students are required to read the Gettysburg Address, which is a very important and good thing for them to read. However, the teachers are taught to have them read it completely without context. Can't tell them it was during the Civil War. Can't tell them that it was after the most significant battle of that war. Can't tell them that it was for a funeral ceremony. It's just ridiculous. And even for the literature, Mary Graybar, who's an excellent writer and has a website called dissidentprof.com, analyzed a model lesson from Florida for Animal Farm. And she found that they did talk about some groups having too much power, and even used the phrase power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, but never taught the source of that quote, and never taught that this was written as a warning sign of Soviet communism. So even though they're teaching some literature, which by the end of high school is only going to be 30%, they're not teaching it well, and they're not teaching it in a context where kids are going to really learn the principles that great literature teaches. So it will destroy the love of reading, because they're going to be reading installation manuals and federal executive orders and menus. There's something called everyday literacy, which, according to Education Week, is put out by the Scholastic group that makes the little magazine where you can order books in elementary school. It's everyday literacy. It's a K through 6 program that incorporates brochures, catalogs, menus, and other types of texts.
Excuse me, Doctor.
Yes?
What do you expect from the world's richest computer geek? You know, he wants you to be able to read off Microsoft. Anything else is...
That's right. This model lesson was from the Common Core English standards, and it equates the Bible with mythology. And this was, the teacher had the student model being crucified in the classroom. When we go over to math, none of the major Common Core architects ever taught math in a classroom either. The only mathematician on the panel refused to sign off. It delays algebra until 9th grade, decreasing the likelihood of readiness for a 4-year college. Teaches geometry by an experimental method that has never succeeded. And children are 2 years behind their international peers in 8th grade. That's in 8th grade, and it's worse by the end of high school. Well, where is this coming from? Let's look at just a couple of the big proponents and movers and shakers within Common Core. And one of the major ones is Linda Darling Hammond. She is mentor or advisor to President Obama's Equity and Excellence Commission, the Council of Chief State School Officers, the National Governors Association, two of the major authors of the Common Core. She was on the Common Core Validation Committee. She is involved with one of the 2 testing consortia that is making the national tests. And she's an advisor to C-Scope, which is that, I think you asked the question about the not being able to see the curriculum. That is more the case with C-Scope than the Common Core so far, because that is a computerized curriculum. It was slipped into Texas because Texas had refused the Common Core, and they had very good standards in a lot of their subject areas, especially in social studies. And so they started using the C-Scope curriculum, which wasn't following the Texas standards, wasn't shown to anybody, and all the teachers had to sign a non-disclosure agreement that they absolutely could not tell the parents or anybody else what was in it. So that's the C-Scope issue. It may end up being that way with Common Core, but we're not sure yet. She's big into radical egalitarianism. She gave a speech to UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, and she said, "We allow this extraordinary inequality in America, which may cause us to innovate our way to failure." And she actually, on the commission, on the Excellence and Equity Commission, came up with a report that says that the federal government should allocate resources to level the playing field. So, a radical redistributionist. She's great friends with Bill Ayers, who suggested Linda Darling Hammond as Secretary of Education. Ayers spoke at a major education conference with the head of Achieve, who spoke on Common Core at that conference, and Arnie Duncan was in attendance, the Secretary of Education. Bill Ayers said, "If we want change to come, we would do well not to look at the sites of power we have no access to, the White House, the Congress, the Pentagon, but we have absolute access to the community, the school, the neighborhood, the street, and the classroom." So these are the kind of people that are behind, and their philosophy are behind this. Mary Graybar reported about Mark Aronson, who's a radical history professor and liar about communism, J. Edgar Hoover, and the Cold War, and he presented as a panelist on for a series called trade books and the Common Core, where do they meet? And he actually believes that speeches of Malcolm X should be considered foundational documents. And then I think a lot of you have probably heard about Melissa Harris Perry. I will play this and see if it works.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
So with that understanding of philosophy, let me move on to the psychological manipulation aspects of these standards and the assessments. The assessments are assessing attitudes, not knowledge. This is a quote from the United States Department of Education report that was just released in February of 2013. It says, as new assessment systems are developed to reflect the new standards, attention will need to be given to the design of tasks and situations that call on students to apply a range of 21st century competencies that are relevant to each discipline. A sustained program of research and development will be required to create assessments that are capable of measuring cognitive, meaning knowledge, which is what we want, and then intrapersonal and interpersonal skills. So, psychological stuff. From the same report, they concluded that researchers should work closely with technology developers to continue to explore how to integrate best practices into new and emerging digital learning environments that are well positioned to promote grit, tenacity, and perseverance in key psychological resources, mindsets, learning strategies, and effortful control for a range of purposes. So this is the Federal Department of Education, the U.S. government, telling test developers how that they want them to develop tests that measure these kinds of psychological attitudes. Not that grit, tenacity, and perseverance are necessarily bad things, but I get really, really uncomfortable when the federal government is in charge of molding and deciding what attitudes are going to be promoted. Just to give you a little example of what's going on with the early childhood standards, these are some excerpts from the Head Start Child Outcome Framework. They talk about wanting children to progress in responding sympathetically to peers who are in need, upset, hurt, or angry, and in expressing empathy or caring for others. Develops an ability to identify personal characteristics, including gender and family composition. Guess what that means? And then develops a growing awareness of jobs and what is required to perform them. Do we really need 3-year-olds to be thinking about their careers? Yeah. These are from Minnesota's standards because these are the ones that I was most involved with. I haven't studied the Florida ones yet in great detail, but I just want to show you that they are almost carbon copies. You have the showing, discussing feelings and showing empathy. You have gender and cultural identity, which is even worse than the Head Start standard, and I'll show you why in a second, and then recognizing and describing roles of workers in the community. Here's the definition of gender identity from the Gay Straight Alliance Network. It says, it refers to a person's internal, deeply felt sense of being either male or female, or something other or in between. Because gender identity is internal and personally defined, it is not visible to others. This is the kind of stuff that is going to be percolating up through our preschools. The National Association for the Education of Young Children, which puts out curriculum, which was involved in developing the Head Start standards, has really radical stuff, and I don't have time to give you that tonight, but I just want to let you know that this is truly a cradle to grave plan. Not only are they going to be doing psychological manipulation, but of course they're going to be doing psychological monitoring. Again, from that same report I quoted earlier, there are important opportunities to leverage new and emerging advances in technology, including education, data mining, and affective computing. Online resources, tools for teachers to develop unprecedented approaches for a wide range of students. And then this is a kindergarten readiness assessment, which they use in Minnesota, but it's actually used in many states around the nation. And they talk about eagerness and curiosity, empathy, and all of those things I just told you about. And then these are the monitoring devices that are in that Department of Education report. You have a facial expression camera, a posture analysis seat, a pressure mouse, a wireless skin conductance sensor, and all sorts of other. And this is what they want to use on kids while they're in front of their computers getting their computerized curriculum and or assessments from the state standards. The National Education Data Model wants to monitor all sorts of things like bus routes, at-risk status, disease, illness, or health condition, religious affiliation, and voting status. The Early Learning Challenge Collaborative talked about what different states were doing in their race to the top Early Learning Challenge applications, and they were saying that California's kindergarten readiness assessment will include social emotional, that means mental health, developmental domains, and data on readiness will be linked to the K-12 data system. And North Carolina wants to screen all children. Minnesota's early childhood screening health history form asks about guns in the home. And Rhode Island proposed early learning data system will be linked to both the K-12 data system and to the state's universal newborn screening and health data system. Well, you know what they do with newborn screening? That is genetic testing. And so they are going to link health, genetic, and this mental health and academic data all into one database. And they also want to have a human capital development data system. We need more unit record data that documents educational participation and experiences in both K-12 and post-secondary education, as well as in the workforce. Well, teachers are not happy with this, as you can imagine, and sometimes they're dismissed as that they just don't want to be held accountable for their teaching. And, you know, I can get that to a certain extent with the union hierarchy, but there are an awful lot of very good teachers that are extremely distressed, and rightfully so, about this. The left fears one-size-fits-all instruction that will turn teachers into widget makers whose primary purpose is to prepare students for testing, not learning. And that's a valid concern. Teachers and parents are organizing testing boycotts all over the country, and that may be something that has to be considered. The Rochester Teachers Union of New York, which is the largest teachers union in the state, is opposing Common Core, even though the national unions are supporting it. Many teachers are resigning, as you talked about, and they're afraid to speak out due to fear of losing their jobs. 500 pre-kindergarten teachers signed a statement against the Common Core. We also have a weakening of the federal privacy law. It's called FERPA, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Student data can now be shared with other federal agencies without consent, and student data can now be accessed by corporations or outside researchers if designated by state or federal education agencies to do an audit or be involved in compliance. So they can basically designate anybody that they want to receive our kids' data without our consent. This is an enormous unfunded mandate. The Pioneer Institute did what they called a middle-of-the-road assessment for the costs nationwide for implementing Common Core for testing, technology, textbooks, and professional development. For Florida, it's over $1 billion. We've received 906 million in grants received, which leaves, at a minimum, by this estimate, $118,325,000 cost to the Florida taxpayers. They broke that down to about $389 per student cost. Where are we going to get that kind of money? The testing costs in South Carolina are projected to be $100 per student. And the FCAT costs currently, or the most current data I could find, is only $19.44 per student. So it's a lot different. The Florida State Board is asking for $400 million in 1 year for Common Core assessments, just the assessments, which is the same amount spent on the FCAT from 1996 to 2008. New York State, there was some data about districts and huge differences in costs compared to the grants they got. I'm not going to go into every little number. And now I'm going to talk about the career tracking. And this is excerpts from a letter from Mark Tucker, who was a friend of Bill and Hillary from 1992, right after they were elected. And he said that his vision is to remold the entire American system into a seamless web that websites, and there should be some on your sheets. The bulleted sheet, the smaller one, I think has the websites on it.
Okay, if you don't have the sheets, make sure we have your email address. We'll get it to you. And the guy that did the printing for Dr. Effram today put everything all in one package, so blame him.
Tim Curtis.
But they're all there.
Okay. We actually have a lobbyist that is in Tallahassee trying to fight this stuff. His name is Randy Osborne, and he's doing a fantastic job, but he's up against really huge odds because it's the Bush-Bill Gates machine. But he did say that the phone calls that are already coming in are making a huge difference, and one senator reported 100 phone calls in one day against Common Core and only 1 in support. So that's one place you can really, 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 really help, is tomorrow get on the phone, get on your computers and say, we don't want Common Core and we don't want data tracking, and we demand that you stop it. There is a petition that you can get through from several of the sites, and we really need help. Randy's up against a big machine. You can do non-tax deductible donations for lobbying through Florida Eagle Forum, and deductible donations through Education Liberty Watch for education materials. Urge others to join this coalition, and if God is gracious and we can slow things down, we're going to get ready for a massive resistance and education effort this next year. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, when they come for the innocent and they do not have to cross over your body, curses be to your life or religion. This is our kids. We have to make a stand. And C.S. Lewis said, of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. And he's absolutely right. So Floridians Against Common Core Education is that one. Education Liberty Watch, and the petition is available at the Florida Action Coalition. But I'm going to send you mostly to Floridians Against Common Core Education. So please find the address in your papers or write it down. I'll leave it up.
Very good.
Thank you for your patience.
Give me the lights, please. I was listening to Bill Bennett the other morning, and someone was on the radio with him talking about Common Core. And that great Republican stalwart of education, Education is Our Bill Bennett, basically said that if you believe that Common Core is somehow detrimental to the education of our children, that you're just shy of wearing a tinfoil hat. Thank you, Bill Bennett. Okay, I'll get it in just a moment. Mark said I'm not a big enough mouth again. So thank you very much, Bill Bennett. Will you please go away now? You've had your say. Jeb Bush, we've had enough Bush. Go away. Okay? But with the information that we've been presented here today, and we have media with us here today, and it'll be interesting to see how it's all reported. But these are undeniable facts, ladies and gentlemen, that we've been presented with. This is what's coming if we don't get on our high horse and start riding right now. Dr. Effram very wisely points out about the 100 phone calls that went in. Well, you know what? There's about, Mark told me there are about 130, 140 of us here this evening. Thank you again for being here. Absolutely. Please, yes. Tomorrow, we should burn up Tallahassee's switchboard. Call your representative. Call my representative. Call somebody else's representative and tell them we want the brakes on Common Core so that they have an opportunity to be exposed to the very good research and information that Dr. Effram has presented to us here this evening. With that, we're going to take a couple questions. It's getting a little late into the evening, and my 5-hour energy drink is wearing out.
Representative Rayburn is on the education.
And oh, by the way, I was just reminded that Representative Rayburn is on the Education Committee. So his representative, the representative's representative is here represented this evening. Let's make those phone calls, please. Let's burn those up. All right, so we're going to take a couple questions. Let me start in the rear of the room. Bonnie?
I just wanted to say that Senator John Legg, he represents part of Hillsborough County, he is the education chair. So call his office as well.
Senator John Legg. He is authoring one of the better bills that can act to slow this down. So he really needs support, but he needs to hear that that we want this slowed down, and we want a fiscal analysis of this bill, of this program, because it is ridiculously high, and they don't even know. In fact, Representative Janet Adkins displayed her inner Nancy Pelosi and said, "We will not know how much this costs until we implement it."
Yeah. All right, we're going to get your questions in just a moment. But what we do when we call our representatives is we call them and we cite for them the facts. This violates 3 separate federal laws. We don't know, in spite of this wonderful representative who reminds me of, well, never mind, I won't go into that. But she gives us her best Nancy Pelosi. We now know what Nancy Pelosi kind of thinking gives us when we don't know the cost going in. So my point very simply is this. When we call our representatives, we call them with stone cold hard facts. And we tell them, violates national 3 federal laws. We don't know what it costs, and at a minimum, we want to know that information before they move forward. Because the folks in this meeting tonight and across our state and across the country for that matter are going to be painted with a very broad brush about we just don't like education. And nothing could be further from the truth. It is because we are concerned about education that we're here this evening, that we homeschool our children, that we pay extra money to send them to a private school. So make sure when you send those emails and you make those phone calls that we hit them with the facts. Let's take some more questions. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to have some clarification. I understand that Greg has given a bill that slows it down, but that doesn't necessarily, to me, indicate he's opposing Common Core. Sounds like he's still in support of Common Core in the long run, once all the proper pieces are put in place. Is that correct?
I believe, and from what I've heard from our lobbyist, that he is very concerned about Common Core. And he is doing the best he can in the situation that he finds himself.
And even if he were here, we could ask him straight out. He probably still would dance around the answer. Next question.
Really quick, on legislation, it's key to note that sometimes a piece of legislation goes through and the only way to slow it down or stop it at this point and this late in the game, because we're ending the session coming up really quick, is to put something, an addendum or something to stop it for now, and they'll address it next year, and that gives them the opportunity to get all their ducks and their bill in the row. So we have to remember that we need to support him now so he knows we're behind him next time around.
Exactly. LAGG.
Yes, ma'am.
What does this mean for ESE students?
English is a second language?
Special ed.
Oh, special ed. I don't know all of the detailed implications of it for special ed, but I am concerned that the lack of and the decrease of quality for everybody is, not going to help them. Yeah, it's probably going to be worse. It's probably going to be worse. And I just wanted to mention really quickly that Friday night, in case you didn't know, the Republican National Committee passed a resolution against Common Core and against the data mining unanimously.
Almost worth a standing ovation for the Republicans to get something right.
They did. They got it right. And so Florida should not be going in the opposite direction.
A broken clock is right twice a day. Yay, Republican executive. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Terry Kemp.
I've talked to several of our representatives, and most of them don't really know what this is about. They're looking for information. There's a tremendous machine that's pushing this, and those people, our representatives, are being dramatically influenced by that. You've put a whole ton of research up there that, as fast as I could take notes, I don't have even half of it. Is your PowerPoint available on the website or something like that?
The handouts that I did have a lot of the same information, almost all of it, and it's footnoted. So they can go to those links. I put them out. I didn't, put them as underlined embedded links. I put the web addresses and the dates and everything, so they can go find everything that I said.
Dr. Effram?
Yes.
With your permission, and I'm going to try to say this loud enough, with your permission, we'll post the digital copy of that so that you can then send that information. You'll have it available, and you'll be able to send it on to the representatives and their representative to get that to them. Great point, Terry. Thank you. Next question. Yes, ma'am, please.
In your professional opinion, because this was not legislatively debated, and it's really a private sector push, do you believe it's possible that there are proponents of it now that will not be if they heard the full story, that possibly there is deception in the presentation of it by omission of all the facts, etc., and that these people that are saying they're proponents have maybe not been told everything but what the machine wanted to tell them?
I believe that is the case, especially with the legislators.
If you all didn't hear the question was, maybe some of the people who are currently proponents of it don't have all the information available to them. And might they change their mind given what we've been shown here this evening? Dr. Effram.
I believe that is the case, like I said, with the legislators. I think at this county school board level, I also think that is much the case. I don't believe that's the case with our Commissioner of Education. He is full-on, full-bore, very much in favor of Common Core, and his unwillingness to step back from it cost him his job in Indiana. And he was not only a proponent of Common Core, but he was also a proponent of early childhood mental health screening and these radical early childhood standards. So I think he is a big proponent, but how much the state board knew and how much the county board members and legislators know, I don't know. Yes, ma'am.
Didn't Michelle Reed support Bennett to stop? I was reading an article the other day that because of his pushback to the unions in Indiana, and so it's like, he apparently stood up to the union machine in Indiana, but was supporting Common Core, these other topics that we're not too pleased about. But I did read that Michelle Reed was, during when she was here in the state, that she kind of championed Bennett too.
She may well have. I know he was also championed by former Governor Bush, and Commissioner Bennett was one of the governor's chiefs for change. And that was big. The Common Core part of it was really big in that.
Jack?
Thank you. Doctor, in your literature here it says, and is a system that has failed in other countries. Could you, for my personal information, give me an idea of what other countries? I'm thinking Europe. And why would we be pushing something? Why would they be pushing something on us that has been failing, or does that record failure?
One word, Laura.
I know.
All right, so the question was, why would we do something that we already have a track record on that has failed? And what are those countries? Can you say Western Europe?
What I put in there was specifically about the school to work system, the career tracking by government system that has failed in Germany. It has failed in the Soviet Union, and it has failed in Japan. Now, Common Core per se, that set of standards hasn't been implemented, field tested, or anything anywhere. So it's not, it's really concerning that they are pushing this on the entire nation without a better idea of what it will do for or to students.
Maybe they don't want us to know what's in it.
Yeah, that could be. I'm going to get you next. Yes, sir? You had a question, please?
Is there any way on a state or local level that we could defund this stuff?
You want to hear the question?
The question was if we can defund it on a state or a local level. The Senate Bill 1076 that just went through was the Education Appropriations Bill, and they said it will go through depending on funding. So they're not, because they don't even know how much it's going to cost. No, on a local level, because the districts have to do, what they're funded to do by Tallahassee, it is highly unlikely. Now, the state can choose not to implement it still, but some of that will probably cause consternation with Florida's Race to the Top grant, the $900 million that they got.
It's how they control us every time with the dollars.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a question. I know Dr. Effram, and thank you for all this information. You've done an analysis on a couple of the bills that Senate Bill 878, I understand, has already passed 39-0 against us. But the House Bill 7027, which has to do with education accountability, and has to do with all this data mining of all of our children's information from cradle on up. That is still pending, and that's still up. If everybody would call their Florida representatives and ask them to please oppose this bill.
That would be the best thing to do. However, just before I came in, I talked to Randy, and he said that the House took 878, added a little amendment on it, and sent it back to the Budget Committee in the Senate, which means that it's probably going to pass, and I don't think they're going to take up and do anything with 7027. But that doesn't change the message that you need to say, no data mining. We hate 878. Just stop it.
All right, we're going to have one more question. No. Roger.
Go ahead.
Mark.
You can't hide in the private schools? And if the answer is no, why can't you hide?
It's complicated with the private schools. The Catholic schools have taken Gates money for other things, not for Common Core, but they have gotten so much in grants from Gates for other things the Catholic Church has that it seems like the schools have just fallen over. The other issue, we have the issue of Governor Scott thinking and Tony Bennett thinking that the voucher students in private schools that receive money, state money, should take the Common Core tests, which is going to make it very difficult for the private schools to teach their own curriculum. And then you have the problem of voucher laws being passed all over the country that require the state tests for accountability. And actually on our website, Education Liberty Watch's website, we did a freedom grading scale of all the school choice laws in the country to see how many of them required those. But in Florida at the moment, private schools can either take the FCAT, the voucher students can either take the FCAT or take a nationally norm reference test. As long as the nationally norm reference test isn't aligned to Common Core, you're okay. But if these national tests, like the Terra Nova, is starting to align with Common Core, then private schools are going to be in trouble.
And you mentioned the SAT.
Right.
Will be written.
Right. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Effram.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your attention and your interest.